Alrighty, hello and welcome to my first upload on my YouTube channel. I am Cleric, and this is going to be my Scareclaw, aka Funko Pop Turbo deck profile. So, a couple things about Scareclaw. I stopped playing the game during tier format and focused on Magic the Gathering. So, shout out to the Junji Ito Elish Norn art card as my field center for now. And when I got back into the game, it was just at the start of the format when Kashtira was dominating everything. And so I tried to find a rogue deck that I thought could compete with Kashtira, and quickly I found Scareclaw, and I was amazed to find out that no one else was really talking about this deck. So we're going to dive into my Scareclaw deck profile now that the Photon Hypernova format is over and we're about to move into Cyberstorm Access. And also, what better way to end off Photon Hypernova than with opening a couple packs. So let me go ahead and move these out of the way. And we will go ahead and start with these packs real quick. So, pack number 1. Mental Tuner, Minai Ruka, Focused Aquamere, Tally-Ho Springans, Gigantic Thundercross, Photon Emperor, Kashtira Overlap, Super Producer, and an ultra rare. This is the Ice Jade Gimmer Agarine? Not quite sure, but hey, can't be mad about an ultra. And then in our other pack, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, flip them over. And we have the Sour Scheduling Red Vinegar Vamoose. Have I read that card? What's this say here? Activate this card if your opponent controls a card in this set card's column. Return all other cards in this card's column to the hand. Neither player can use the unused zones in this card's column. You can only control. This card seems terrible. Defanging, okay. Spoiler alert, there'll be one of those coming up later. Photon Time Stop. Tier Elements Pelargia? Unironically thought that was a German card for a moment. Got Armor Ninja, Evil Eyes Unleashed, Meteor Rush Monocroid, Branded Befallen, and a Cardon the Clear-Sighted. So that's going to be the last packs of Photon Hypernova I probably open, and we ended with a pretty decent Ultra, so I'm not too upset about that. So now, let's go ahead and get started on this deck profile. So, starting with our Scareclaw engine, it is 1, 2, 3, Scareclaw Rykart. Rykart is the best card in the deck, by far. His special effect is that he can summon himself to an adjacent column of another Scareclaw monster, and then add any Scareclaw spell trap from deck to hand. Then, if there are 3 or more defense position monsters on the field, he lets you draw 1 additional card. Apologies for kicking the tripod there. The next Scareclaw name that we play is 1, 2, and 3 of the Acro. I think Acro is the best of the small baby Scareclaws, which I know is a bit of a controversial take. When I watch a lot of other Scareclaw deck profiles, a lot of people play 3 of the Astra. We're only on 2. In fact, a lot of people play 3 of each baby, but I'm doing a 3-2-2 line, and I did not run into issues with that ratio once. I always had a starter in my hand one way or another, and I never struggled to find combos. The reason I like playing 3 Acro rather, is that it stacks. So if you have 2 of them on the field, you're getting the double buff from each Acro. It's also the only one that does something on your opponent's turn by buffing up your guy. And so let's say if you only have Acro, but you don't get away to Twin Saw, at least leaving Acro on the field is giving your Tri-Heart some extra attack. Then finally for Scareclaw, we play the 1 Vice's Starfrost. Pretty mandatory for the deck. He's really, really good. He gives you Baron access, and going into Syac, he'll be really interesting in the deck as he allows you to access Vicious Astrolaud. So let's go ahead and pick all these up. And then we'll get into the spells and traps for Scareclaw. So we play 1, 2, 3 of the Scareclaw Arrival. Scareclaw Arrival is the Monster Reborn, And then it's also a protection from battle or card effect destruction in the graveyard. This card is a mandatory 3 of, I feel. I know some lists play it at 1. I think that is absolutely incorrect. If you see Arrival in hand, it gets you full combo, and then it also lets you search 2 of the better Scareclaw spells and traps, the Defanging and the Twin Saw. And you want one of these 2 on your end board always, because these are the ones that actually do something. This one protects your monster from destruction and targeting of card effects, and then this one's a pop 2 with plus side. So it's like Icarus attack. You tribute a Scareclaw monster, choose 2 cards on the field, and destroy them both. Then, if you have a Link 3 or higher monster, you banish this from the graveyard, and you lock activated Link monster effects for the rest of the turn. And so this auto wins versus Sprite. It auto wins versus Math Mech. Absolutely insane card. And then Defanging protects your Triheart more than he already does through his own effect. Then after that, we have the 1 and 2 Reichphobia. I think you only need to play 2. There are times where a 3rd would have been nice, but I wouldn't have traded access to a 3rd for any of the other cards in the deck. So I think 2 is correct, and I think 2 is fine. So after that, we're going to move into our Scareclaw engine. So our Kashtira engine, rather. We have the 2 Kashtira Fenrir and the 2 Scareclaw Kashtira. So here I played 2-2. I've experimented a lot with different Kashtira ratios. I know some people like to play 3 of the Fenrir, or they'll play like 3 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn. I do think Unicorn and Birth are some insane cards, and when I did play them in the deck, they felt good. However, I decided to cut them in favor of having more going second cards, which you will see later in the profile. But just know for now that 2 Fenrir, 2 Scareclaw Cash was perfect. Never had any issues with them. They came up when I needed them. Fantastic cards. Then we have the 2 Right Soth and 1 Terraforming. So the Terraforming was nice because it also gave us access to Reichphobia in case we didn't have access to that through our engine. But primarily I used it to search Right Soth. This card was really, really good and almost always forced an interaction either directly on its activation or through the Fenrir that I was adding. One of these 2 cards was either forcing an Ash or an Imperm or a Veiler or some sort of response from my opponent, and that was all before I had to commit to my Scareclaw engine. So on top of this card being great for the archetype, it also forced interaction. Cannot speak good enough about this engine. If you're playing Scareclaw, you should be playing the Kashtira package for sure. Next, we did play the Adventure package. So we had the 3 Water Enchantress and the 1 Griffin Rider, followed by the 2 Red of Aramesir, the 1 Draco Back, and the 1 Fateful Adventure. I know some people would probably want to include the 3rd Right. I thought about it as well at times, but I found myself, even at 42, the list is a 42 card list, opening doubles of Adventure Engine cards, which just hurts so bad in the deck. You really do not want to be seeing 2 of these. There are situations and hands where it's okay and it's better than it could be. But ultimately, if you see 2 adventure cards, you're already kind of starting from the back foot. And so I did cut the 3rd Aramesir. There were times where I considered cutting a 3rd Water Enchantress, but you also really want this Griffin. The Omni Negate comes up so frequently as you make your Scareclaw board, and the Water Enchantress guarantees you 2 defense position monsters for your right card effect. So you're going to get that draw 1 after you summon Reichart, which was invaluable. So I would not cut this package. However, there is possibly room to mess with the ratios one way or the other. And then finally, we're going to get into our hand traps. We played the 3 Ash Blossom, the 2 Droll Lock, the 2 Book of Moon, and the 2 Imperm. Imperm is probably the most cuttable during the Photon Hypernova format. You would cut 1 Imperm out of 3rd Book of Moon, cut 1 Imperm out of 3rd Droll if you felt like your meta required those interactions. However, at my locals, we play with a pretty wide array of decks, and so I did want the generic monster negate. I thought these ratios were perfect. The one of these two hand traps here were the 41st and 42nd card. So again, if you wanted to go down to 40, you could possibly cut the Book of Moons, probably are the most cuttable, just because you have Imperm and Ash to deal with Kashtira. But I thought that this 42 was perfect. At the end of the format, I loved where the deck was at. I loved how it ran. I had no complaints about the main 42. So that was the Scareclaw main deck. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the extra deck, and then we'll do side. So because we play tokens, I have my 4 Scapegoat tokens, and I apologize, my extra deck is not in order ahead of time. So we just had the 4 tokens here. And then I'm going to quickly try and organize this out as best I can before I start laying cards down. As I do this, I'll just talk more about the deck and where I thought it was in the meta. I was really surprised to see so few people talking about Scareclaw, because it felt like it had winning matchups into almost every meta deck. You had a great matchup into Kashtira. You had a really good matchup into all of the back row decks. With Defanging being able to protect your copy of the Triheart in the EMZ. You also have another card in your extra deck that helped deal with those cards pretty easily, which we'll get to now in a moment. But there was the only matchup that I think the deck struggled with was Runic variants. I really struggled against Naturia Runic, but I think a lot of decks struggled against Naturia Runic. I do think Nat Runic was... maybe this might be a hot take. I think Nat Runic was the best deck in the format. I know my decks did really well into Kashtira, and so that's probably why I didn't feel like I was as punished by Cash last format. But Nat Runic I could never get a match on. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move into the extra deck. So we have the 1, 2, 3 Scareclaw Lightheart. Apologies for nudging the tripod one more time. So Scareclaw Lightheart is the link 1 for the deck. When you link summon into him, you get to search your field spell. So your common combo will be normal a baby, link into Lightheart, Lightheart effect. Lightheart add Reichphobia, activate Reichphobia. You either add the Visus if you have the Reichheart in hand, or you add the Reichheart and then special the Reichheart. This card is not once per turn, so a lot of people would try to Ash it, and then what you would do is you would go through the combo and then make a second one, and then you would get your field spell that way, or you would use the Visus combo to extend, and you could add the second copy when you reborn him from grave. Absolutely insane card. I love Link 1 cards, Link 1 strategies. Link 1s are broken, please keep printing them, Konami. Next, we have the 1, 2, and 3 Triheart. Absolutely insane card. My favorite boss monster of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last 5 or so years. I fucking love Scareclaw Triheart. For those who don't know what he does, he's a Link 3 with 3000 attack, and his continuous effect is that all monsters on the field get put into defense position. Then he is unaffected by the effects of defense position monsters. His second effect is that he can reborn a level 3 or lower Scareclaw, add a different Scareclaw from deck to hand, and then you get locked into Scareclaws for the rest of the turn. Absolute house of a card. So many decks cannot out this card once it hits the board. 3 does come up. You could probably cut the 3rd if you were really wanting to throw something else in the extra deck. The Scareclaw extra deck itself is pretty wide open. I play 3 just because against Cash you do get punished slightly if they rip one too many of the Triheart. Because the fact that the reborn is not once per turn, there are some combos where you cycle through all 3 copies in order to get the proper babies on the board so you can push for lethal. But I do think the 3rd copy was cuttable. Next, for generic links, we have the 1 Link Spider and the Earth Charmer. This is anti-nib. This is against Kashtira. You reborn their Fenrir and you get full combo. Both of these cards felt mandatory in the list. I would not take them out. cards that are cuttable, Nightmare Unicorn. It helped deal with some very specific monsters and cards by giving you access to something to spin. If you got into a grind game, you could like Ausa, bring something back, link into Unicorn, spin away their card, keep advantage going that way. Again, probably a cuttable card if you wanted to throw something else in the extra deck. However, I didn't find anything else that I valued more than Unicorn. Next is the BLS Soldier of Chaos. This was the other card I alluded to earlier. I know during the SIAC Sneak Peek tournament, I went against a Labyrinth player, and I just made this card and there was nothing they could do. This card was the MVP actually of that Sneak Peek. Every single match, it felt like I made this and my opponent spent so much time trying to out it. Soldier of Chaos is an absolute house. Definitely a mandatory card in the deck because there are certain hands where you cannot get to Tri-Heart and or you'd prefer Soldier of Chaos because you don't have the extension and you want to hold the Scareclaw in hand for follow-up. Those hands are few and far between, but they do come up. The next one I'm going to drop is two. We had the final Link monster, the Cherubini, and the Phantom Beast Draco Sack. Not a lot of other lists I saw play this package. It came up 2 or 3 times for me across the format, but when it did come up, it felt so cheesy. So what you can do is you go Phantom Beast using Fenrir and Scareclaw Cash. You overlay, or you can actually use Griffin Rider. If you open like Griffin Rider and Scareclaw Cash, that's a thing you can do. Like let's say the hand is Scareclaw Cash, Fenrir, Scareclaw Arrival, and maybe Defanging, right? And a hand trap. So you have to start your turn by summoning, not Fenrir, but the Griffin Rider. So you summon the Griffin Rider, Scareclaw Cash effect, banish the Defanging from hand to summon it. You link it off into Lightheart. Lightheart gets impermed, ashed, interrupted. You then arrival the Scareclaw Cash from grave back onto the board. And then you overlay for Dracoback. Dracoback detach, you make the 2 tokens, they're level 3s. And then you can make the Cherubini. I realized as I made that combo up on the spot, it actually wouldn't work because you have the Lightheart already in your EMZ and you don't have an arrow for it. But case in point was that there are hands where you make the Dracoback, summon the 2 tokens, make the Cherubini, dump either the Water Enchantress, getting you access to your Adventure Engine, or you can drop the level 3 Scareclaw, and then you can make Tri-Heart, because Tri-Heart's generic. A lot of people may not know that. He just needs 3 effect monsters. So if you get 3 effect monsters, you can just make Tri-Heart. And so if you use effect monster 1, effect monster 2, and then any other piece of extension in your hand, you can just make Tri-Heart, and then you have your level 3 engrave to reborn and then add the Reichardt and keep comboing. So I do like this package a lot in the deck, and I would absolutely keep it in there. Finally, for the last 3 cards, we have the Shangri-Ira and the Arise Heart. They didn't really come up for me frequently in this build of the deck. I previously played a heavier Kashtira package where the deck was more of a Scareclaw Kashtira deck instead of a Scareclaw Adventure deck, in which case these cards came up all the time. But in this build, they didn't come up a lot. Shangri-Ira might be cuttable. You keep the Arise Heart because I believe, if I understand the card correctly, right, if your opponent has Shangri-Ira and then you can summon Scareclaw Kashtira and they used its effects in your standby, you can make a Rise Heart over your Scareclaw Kashtira. And then you have a 3000 Macrocosmos starting to whack into things. And then the last card is the Baron Tippler. So she would come up in hands where you do the Vice of Starfrost combo. As mentioned earlier with the Adventure package, having that Omni Negate is really important for your deck. And it does just that. And then finally, for the side deck, obviously side decks are always dependent on your local metagame, so adjust it as you see fit. We had 3D Barrier because there was a lot of Sword Soul and a lot of Branded at my locals. We played the 1 Scareclaw Cash because in some matchups, the Twin Saw just wasn't good enough, and so having the additional Omni felt good. We then had the going second cards, 3 evenly matched, best card in the format. wins you every game it gets played almost. Absolutely insane. Anti-back row, we had the 3 Cyclone and the 1 Duster. And then again, because there's so much branded at my locals, I played the 1 Druis Worm and then the 1, 2, and 3 Baldrake. So that was my Scareclaw Kashtira deck. Again, I think that this deck was heavily underreported on and underplayed in the Photon Hypernova format. It does get worse going into Syac simply because Droll and Ogre are going to be all over the place, and it makes these cards worth. So I'm still trying to math out really what I want to play next. I have a few ideas on what I'll be doing, and I've been testing some lists online, but until I get to the bottom of that, that's going to be it from me. So thank you for watching my first YouTube video. I'm going to have a opening uploaded pretty soon after this deck profile, and then hopefully later in the month, after I've had a chance to play at locals in the Syac format with my new list and my new deck, I'll have a profile coming up shortly for that as well. So here, just want to give some last minute shout outs to my lovely girlfriend for letting me use her tripod, and my friends Quincy and Daniel, who primarily are my testing partners and keep me involved in the game. So thanks for watching.